I have two brief questions I'd like to ask, if I may.
Hi, welcome to Left Foot Media. My name is Brendan Malone and you're watching The Daily Question. Today's question of the day: has the left just imploded itself over the Kavanaugh incident? Or as we might say in New Zealand, have they just scored an own goal or given themselves a big uppercut? Now, the reason I'm asking that question is because about a month or so back, before this whole Kavanaugh debacle and circus just went into high gear, I would have said to you that the left in America were in a very dominant position heading into the upcoming elections that are going to be happening very soon in the US. They were in a much stronger position than what they were around the time that Trump was elected. Things were looking pretty good for them. But all of a sudden, with what's happened over Kavanaugh and the way that they have conducted themselves, I think their position has been greatly undermined. I don't know for certain where they are right now. I guess the upcoming elections, they will tell us, they will give us a good indication. But my sense is that they are no longer in the strong and dominant position that they were about a month or two ago in America. Now, why is this? Well, first of all, because of this absolutely dogmatic, fundamentalist an unwillingness to even consider the basic principles of natural justice and how they should be upheld in situations like this. Instead, around the whole Kavanaugh thing, we have seen hysteria and witch trial. Basically, that's been sort of the order of the day. Now, even if you are someone who is a die-hard believer in this idea that all allegations of sexual assault and rape should be absolutely believed and should be treated as proof of wrongdoing. Even if you're someone who believes that, now by the way, I obviously don't, because it would violate the basic principles of natural justice, and that would not be a good thing. I think the best way forward for people who are genuine victims of sexual assault and rape is to maintain and uphold those basic principles of natural justice, because it secures, I think, a fair and open hearing of the facts, but at the same time, it doesn't create a situation in which innocent people are likely to become the victims and have their lives destroyed by a system that no longer maintains that important presumption of innocence until you've corroborated that there is credibility to the allegations being made against a person. But if you're someone who is absolutely committed to the other idea that all allegations should be believed and should never be questioned, they should be taken as proof of wrongdoing, your cause has not been helped at all. In fact, the cause of genuine victims of sexual assault and rape, by the way, I have friends in that category, their cause has had irreparable harm, I would argue, done to it by what we've seen happen in the way that those who have been so politically active against Kavanaugh have conducted themselves. I think there will be, probably for months and years to come, this incident will be used to undermine genuine victims of sexual assault and rape. When they bring their allegations forward, I would say people will point back to this incident, certainly in America, and it will be used as a tool to undermine the cause of justice for those who are genuine victims of sexual assault and rape. Not only that, but any thinking person can see that Christine Blasey Ford was used by those Democrats and those political opportunists who were looking to try and undermine, to try and scotch the Kavanaugh nomination. They were not interested in genuine justice for an alleged victim of sexual assault. Instead, they were trying to secure their political end, and their political end was to destroy the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh. That was the whole aim here. Now, that political end is very different to the end of trying to secure genuine justice for the victim of wrongdoing. They're not the same thing. And so in that situation of them trying to achieve their political end, Christine Blasey Ford just becomes a means to an end. They sat on her allegations for weeks. They didn't take them to any relevant authorities. They didn't bring them forward and make them public straight away. They sat on them for weeks until they could find what they thought was the most politically opportune moment to utilise them to try and achieve their political aims, which were not the same thing as trying to achieve justice for an alleged victim of sexual assault or rape. So any thinking person can see here that those political opportunists on the left who were trying to destroy this nomination, they have not at all helped or been seriously that focused on the cause of justice. I mean, you will hear them go quiet now. That's what's going to happen. There will be a bit of buzz for another week or so, and then they will go quiet. No one will be talking about trying to get justice for Christine Blasey Ford. Here's my prediction, though. In about a year's time, my prediction is that there will be a slew of articles in the media, and they will have headlines something along the lines of, a year on from the Kavanaugh nomination, what have we learnt? A year on from the Kavanaugh nomination, things are worse than ever before for women. There'll be that kind of headline made, but apart from that, that'll be about it. There really wasn't a focus on trying to achieve justice here. Instead, the focus was on trying to achieve a political end, and that political end was the destruction of the nomination of Kavanaugh. That's what they wanted. And why? Why were they so obsessed with undermining this man's nomination to the Supreme Court? Well, if I was a betting man, and if I had to guess, I would say it's because of the issue of abortion. They were absolutely petrified of what having Kavanaugh, or someone like Kavanaugh, on the Supreme Court would mean for what has now become one of the sacred cows of the progressive left, and that is the issue of abortion. It is almost now at the point where abortion is not just celebrated, it's almost become like some feminine rite of passage. This idea of shout your abortion is what it's become now. And so they're so petrified of what Kavanaugh would mean on the Supreme Court that they were willing to do anything at all to try and undermine that nomination. Now, what's so ironic and interesting about all of this is the fact that if you go back and look at the pro-life history and the abortion issue in American politics since about the 1950s onwards, it's absolutely fascinating when you realise that initially, prior to Roe v. Wade, the left were the pro-life political people. It was the people on the left who would go to their anti-Vietnam War marches, and then they would turn up to a pro-life march to oppose abortion as well, because there was a consistency, an internal consistency and ethical logic to what they were doing. They would say, you shouldn't be destroying innocent human lives in any of their forms, whether it's in a war or whether it's in a womb. And so there was a consistency there. And then that all changes after Roe v. Wade. It's absolutely fascinating that prior to Roe v. Wade, the Republican Party and those who were firmly entrenched in it were the pro-abortion party. In fact, Ronald Reagan, when he was governor, famously signed into law one of the most liberal abortion laws of the day. Now, he subsequently has an intellectual conversion away from the pro-abortion ideology and becomes pro-life in his thinking, and it's primarily due to a lady called Mildred Jefferson. Mildred Jefferson is the first black woman to graduate Harvard Medical School, and she is credited with being the primary influence and bringing this strong intellectual and cogent logical argument for the pro-life position to Reagan, and Reagan realising the truth of this position. And then obviously during his presidency, he's a very different type of president. But it's interesting how the dynamics were completely flipped on their heads. Now, of course, what starts to happen, though, is you get militant third-wave feminism, and it starts to hijack and take over particularly the Democrat Party, and it becomes this sort of dominant force in the left. And this militant third-wave feminism has this very sort of Marxist view of this revolutionary struggle between males and females, and this idea that women have to rise up and overthrow this masculine tyranny. And for these militant third and fourth wave feminists, abortion becomes this form of emancipation for them. It's this false idea that they try and sell, and they're still trying to sell today, that if you can be just like a deadbeat dad who runs out on his responsibilities, his parental responsibilities, somehow you'll find freedom. Because obviously a man can abandon his responsibilities towards his unborn children at any point. He can abandon a pregnancy at any stage. He can just get up and leave. He can be a deadbeat dad about these things. And what the militant third and fourth wave feminists said, well, that's not fair, that's a form of oppression. Women need to also be able to abandon pregnancy at any stage as well, abandon their parental responsibilities, and abortion is the vehicle, abortion is the tool that gives us this form of emancipation. This great lie that if you turn females against the very heart of the feminine genius, the profound and wondrous gift of motherhood, that somehow you are emancipating and freeing them. And they take over the Democrat Party very effectively, and all of a sudden, you have the situation where the people who are pro-lifers are driven out of the Democrat camp, and they have to find a very uneasy home, and it has been a very uneasy home ever since with the Republicans. And it's fascinating how that history has all played out. And what's also interesting is how the dynamics have shifted and changed with the introduction of this militant third wave feminist sort of view about abortion. Because initially abortion was sold as this lesser of two evils. You have to have this tolerable evil of legalizing abortion in order to prevent another evil, which is the destruction of female lives in illegal backstreet abortion. So, in order to save lives, you have to have and tolerate this lesser of two evils. And it was sort of this idea of these hard cases around the fringes, and that's why you would legalise it. So it's this tolerable lesser of two evils approach. But that's not what it is anymore. No way. Now for militant feminism, third and fourth wave feminism, abortion, like I said before, is practically almost a religious sort of sacramental type thing for them. It is held up as this, it is now being called a right, it is now being celebrated, it has almost become like a rite of passage, this whole shout your abortion movement. It is a massive and dramatic shift from what it once was. This idea that it was a tolerable evil, something you had to tolerate in order to avoid some even, or what was suggested was an even worse evil, it has now become celebrated as some profound good. And that's even more, it's added another lie on top of an existing lie, this idea that it would be an act of emancipation for females. But here's the thing about what we've seen played out around Kavanaugh and the whole abortion issue pertaining to this Kavanaugh incident. There's nothing new about this. This has been a common tactic from pro-choice, pro-abortion activists from the very beginning. There's a guy called Bernard Nathanson, and he died a couple of years ago. And Bernard Nathanson was a doctor, he was an abortionist, and he performed thousands of abortions. And not only did he perform thousands of abortions, but he's one of the sort of founding fathers who was very involved in the pro-abortion activist movement before Roe v. Wade in America. Now, what happens is, around the time of ultrasound technology, where ultrasound becomes more of a thing, a medical professional friend of his comes to him one day and brings him some footage of ultrasound footage that they've taken during an abortion. And Bernard Nathanson, who has performed thousands of abortions at this point and has been involved, very heavily involved in pro-abortion activism and trying to change the law, he watches this footage and he watches in horror at what he sees, and he never performs another abortion again after seeing this ultrasound image of what he's been participating in as an abortionist. It completely changes his whole worldview, being confronted for the first time by the true horror of what's going on here, the destruction of innocent human life. Now, Bernard Nathanson publishes a couple of books subsequently about his story. And one of his books that he published, which was quite important, was called Aborting America. It was published by Doubleday. And in that book, Aborting America, he spells out quite clearly and very specifically the fact that they lied about the number of backstreet abortion deaths. They completely elevated and inflated the statistics. They misrepresented them to the tune of thousands. So they falsely inflated them by thousands in order to scare the public into supporting their pro-abortion activism. And like he says in the book, we considered it a very effective tool, and it was a very useful way of achieving our revolutionary aims. We considered it acceptable in our revolutionary cause. He's quite open about the fact that this kind of lying and deception was sort of fundamental to their cause, and they didn't see any problem with it. And that's really what we've seen going on here with Kavanaugh. There is, once you've got someone to embrace the idea that ending the life of a human being in a womb is morally okay, telling a few lies, voiding the principles of natural justice, being fast and loose with the truth, and a man's reputation, that's child's play at that point. Everything else that comes after that, accepting this idea of ending life in a womb being morally okay, and a good thing that you should be actively celebrating and fighting for, anything else, dishonesty, anything else that's of a lesser moral character or quality, that becomes child's play. It's a piece of cake at that point. So there's nothing new about this, but I would say that the left has done itself irreparable harm. Effectively, what they've done here is they have replicated some of the worst excesses of what happened around the time of the Trump election. And they've fallen back into some of those same patterns. And the problem is, at the end of it all, it doesn't make them look very principled. It really does make them look, as one US politician has already pointed out, like they'd be very, very dangerous people to have in power, because they just want nothing more than this bold, naked and unethical grasp of power that they will wield in any way possible that they consider to be acceptable to achieve their political aims. And that's a truly frightening place to be in. if you're being governed by people like that. The other thing I'd say around the Kavanaugh nomination that is a very interesting question, and that is this: has there become now too much of a weight that is placed on the judiciary around US policy and lawmaking now? If people on both sides, left and right, are so obsessed with who's being nominated, doesn't that perhaps suggest that this unelected group of officials who are put there by politicians and not by the public, that they now wield too much power and that they have too much control in a way that isn't necessarily healthy? And perhaps there's some questions that need to be asked about the balance and checks of all of that, and whether there's too much power in the judiciary when it comes to policy and lawmaking. As per usual, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please let me know what you think in the comments section below. And if you like the content I'm creating and you'd like to see more of it, then please support me on PayPal or Patreon. There is a link for both in the video description below. That's right, I can hear my theme music too. I'll see you tomorrow on The Daily Question.